everybody, how you doing? Hope you're doing great. Angelo Lombardo here, talking about all things playing offense, which is about identifying your objectives, your purposes, building a plan to go after them, rather than doing what so many people do, which is just kind of sitting back and letting life, letting career, letting things just happen to them, and constantly being reactive, which is defensive. So we're all about playing offense. And, one of the biggest areas of playing offense is about not letting fear hold you back. So today I want to talk about this thing called fear. And this isn't just a big motivational thing, rah-rah, that I'm going to pump at you through the screen. And there's a lot of great memes and stuff out there about, fear and pushing through. And I love them, and I download them, and I push them out to my team. But the thing is that there are some very firm, business and even economic laws that govern why embracing failure and pushing through the fear of failure can actually make you better than if you play it safe. And that's what I want to talk about today. Failure, or rather the fear of failure, it's an interesting thing. It's actually, unlike a lot of fears, it actually gets bigger as we get older. So, we come into this world, we really only have a few basic fears. For example, the fear of falling is something that's wired into us. But most other fears, we develop as a product of our environment, how we're raised, where we're raised, the type of things we're exposed to. But a lot of them taper off as we get older because we realize, they're irrational. You lose your fear of the dark and things like that. But your fear of failure grows the older you get. And that's because the fear of failure is tied into one of the other biggest fears we have, which is the fear of loss. Losing the things we have worked so hard to accumulate over our lives. Our shelter, our financial security, our family security, our ability to just feed ourselves on a week-to-week basis. And so the older we get and the more entrenched in our lifestyle we get, the more comfortable our lifestyle gets, our fear of failure grows, where ultimately it can constrict us. But here's the thing. If you let that fear of failure take hold of you and hold you back, ironically, you can ultimately bring about all the things you don't want to have happen because your skill set becomes stale because you don't try anything new. You don't get exposed to new ways of thinking. So it's essentially, what happens is you become irrelevant. You hear about these workers in the workplace, people in their late 50s and 60s that, the workplace passes them by. They don't understand about technology and digital, and they get replaced by younger people. Well, it's because, this whole fear of failure gripped them, and they basically just kind of latched on to what they currently have. So what I'm going to show you today is that pushing through your fear and embracing failure is ultimately going to be one of the best things you can do. And again, it's not just some rah-rah. So the first thing I want to talk about is the laws that govern failure. So there's, I love this, I have a friend who works for Boeing. I met him when I was in graduate school. And as he will tell you, he is a rocket scientist. He designs guidance algorithms that keep the rockets going up when they get launched. Now, I remember years and years ago, they were experimenting with some type of new satellite rocket, and I read about how it got launched, and it blew up like 3 seconds after the launch. And I asked him, I said, what's the mood in your group when that happens? Is it just this massive depression? Are people afraid they're going to lose their job? I'm like, what's it like? And he's like, no. He goes, it's none of that. He goes, Angelo, you don't understand. He goes, we have to things have to fail. Things have to blow up. Things have to crash in order for us to find out two things. What went wrong, what's not working, and what is working. And he goes, we model a lot of this stuff on computers. He goes, but until you actually put it all together and launch it, you're not going to know. So we get rid of what doesn't work, and we focus on what does work. We build on our failure. And if you think about that, every great accomplishment kind of follows that. And we've all heard about Edison and the light bulb, right? That's fine. The one I like, though, see, here's the thing. in my opinion, and I'm big, I admire what he did, but in my opinion, Edison was kind of in a no-lose situation, right? The world had no light bulbs, so he could just kept going for as long as he needed to until he fixed it. The story I love is the story of Dyson. The guy fails 5,000 times before he gets a working prototype. Now, think about it. How many of us could stick that out? It's like, at number 95, I'm sure most of us are thinking, maybe I ought to find something better. This may not work out. But, at 1,000, fails 1,000 times, and he's still got 4,000 more to go and doesn't even know it before he gets this thing to work. But here's the thing. I read an interview with him once, and they talked about whether, all those failures ultimately, had him questioning whether he should be doing it. Because, it's, again, unlike Edison, it's like, there's a lot of vacuum cleaners in the world. It's not like they were going to necessarily need his, right? And he said, no, he goes, because every time we didn't get it right, we learned something, we built on that. And that's the key. When you fail, it's not like, think of it this way, right? You're here and you want to get here, okay? This area in between, you start making progress and you fail. It's not like you forfeit everything and go back to the beginning. You're starting at a new starting point. So originally you started here, you made progress, it didn't work out, but you learned something, and now you're starting from here. And you make more progress, and you fall down again, and you learn, and then you move forward. Because here's the thing. This isn't just some, theoretical thing. This is actually right in line with the laws of what they call the law of marginal return, which drives all economics. So I can't really, if I had a flip chart, and next time I'll do this with a flip chart, I'll show you. But if you have a graph, right, so you have this axis and this axis, the law of marginal return states that every time you put something in, you get something out. And so it's a curve that kind of starts going up like this. So you keep putting things in, you keep putting more out, and you start getting more and more progress. But here's the thing. It's if you put one in, you get one out. You put another one in, you get another one. It keeps building on itself. So the more activity you put in, the more output you get. It builds and builds and builds and builds. And this is the exact same thing with your input. Effort, trying new things. Okay, you hit a point where you fail, but you've got all of that output that you've learned from that you're now building from. And this is where ultimately you create an entirely new skill set. Now, I want to be really clear. I'm not talking about reckless failure. It's not about going out tomorrow, quitting your job, and starting your, Tutti Frutti pie company. That might be good to do as a side hustle so that as you fail, you're not going to put your family out on the street, or going out and climbing Mount Everest with no experience. That's suicidal. But it's taking a job that you might not necessarily think you're completely ready for. I have done that 6 times in my career. I totally talked my way into a role that I had no business being in. And it was an unmitigated disaster for the first 12 months. But I will tell you, the stuff I've learned has made me far more competitive today versus my peer set. Because a lot of them, when you follow a track like I do, which is traditionally sales, most people are just salespeople. But because of the stuff I've tried and failed on, I understand project management, finance, logistics, supply chain, and all of those came from miserable failures. But I learned, fortunately didn't get fired, and built from them, and now I have this skill set which keeps me relevant despite the fact that I'm kind of now getting to be one of the older people in the workplace. So I want you to keep that in mind. As you're thinking about the things you want to do, something new in your career, do you want to start a business that maybe you can start as a side hustle? Yes, you're going to get in above your head if you're challenging yourself, and chances are you're going to fall down, but you're going to build those skills that are going to make you relevant and ultimately going to keep you relevant, and ultimately is going to bring you the success and the security that you ultimately want. And this is why it's so important to always play offense, because you're building, you're progressing, you're moving forward rather than hunkering down and kind of letting the world close in on you. So push through that fear. Don't be afraid to fall down. Take smart risks. Experience smart failures. Play offense and be a success. Take care.